Hello, and thanks for joining us for this month's Gray Webinar Group training session on YouTube. Today, we're looking at ways to produce for deeper retention in your local newscasts. My name is Bill Seitzler, and I work for a company called Smith Geiger. We do research and consulting for local TV news, national news, and entertainment properties all across North America. We've headquarters in Los Angeles and New York, and today I am in Austin, Texas, where I work and live, and we are recording this session for you. If you join our session live next time, please make sure to remember these rules, including muting your phone. But today, since you're not joining us live, there are no rules. So let's get started. This is the working title for this session, and really to maximize rating in today's local TV news world, you must maximize the amount of time a news viewer gives you before they turn the channel off or turn the TV off or turn the channel altogether. It really is a lot about retention. So before we jump into how we're going to do this, and drive them deeper into our shows, let's talk a little bit about why we need to do that. The reasons for changing the formats in these traditional newscasts. Well, as you know, and we won't get into the heavy details here. There's been major changes with how Nielsen is going to be doing their rating systems moving forwards. I put on the screen here that you got to earn 6 minutes of viewing per quarter hour time. Now, quite frankly, that's just not true. Nielsen wants you to earn 5 minutes. If you earn 5 minutes of viewing with their measurement system, they will give you credit for the quarter hour. I say 6 minutes because, quite frankly, why should we want to cut it so close? So these retention techniques I'm going to show you in a couple of seconds really are designed to get 6 to 7 minutes of viewing minimum per quarter hour. Of course, we'd like to have all 15 minutes. ComScore's minute by minute ratings really demands a much higher detail and level of folks watching deeper into newscasts because they measure things minute by minute and then go back and get an average of the entire half hour or quarter hour, whatever it is you're trying to get a rating on. And so you can imagine that if you're not driving people deeper into your shows, you're not going to get very good ratings with either ComScore or Nielsen. Of course, there's also changes with the news audience. We're seeing it all across the country now. Sampling of your non-favorite newscast is happening more and more often than what we've ever seen. There's less loyalty and more volatile viewers overall. I'm going to show you a couple of numbers from a study we just completed for you guys at the end of last year for all the Gray television stations listed on the screen. More than 3,600 respondents in this study, as you can see, back in October through November between the ages of 18 to 54. And we divide the audience into four unique segments. There's core loyalists, which as you can see are the highest frequency, longer term viewers, rarely change the channel. Those are the folks that in the old school of Nielsen Diaries just wrote you down in the book whether they actually watched you that night or not. And then all the way down to surfers. Roving loyalists are people that, think they're loyal, but quite frankly, as we ask them a series of questions about their behaviors, we're finding out that their attitude is loyal, but their behaviors are anything but loyal. They are really surfing around a lot, or I should say, switching the channel around a lot to watch some of these stations that aren't their favorite. Then you got the seeker pool, very key pool that make up 32% of the overall study that we looked at in that Gray national study. And these guys have a favorite station, but night in night out they're going to go where the content that they like is the best. So they'll start with their favorite station generally on most nights, but as soon as that lead story comes in that they're not satisfied with, or two and three stories into an A block or what have you, they're surfing around looking for more content that's just going to meet their needs. And then, of course, we do have surfers, and surfers are people that watch enough local news to get into our studies, but as their name would indicate, they are truly surfing all the time between entertainment and news and all kinds of different things. So it's that group all the way on the left, that core loyalty that's dropped so low. That's one of the reasons why we're playing for all the other three audience segments that, quite frankly, you have to drive them deeper into your shows, or you're not going to get the kind of ratings you want because less loyalty equals more use of the remote control for sure. So volatility is really defining local news consumption. As we talked about the demographics of this study, only 9% of people between the age of 18 to 24 are core loyalists, compared to 24% that are 45 to 54. So the older you are, the more likely you are to be a core loyalist. But overall, there's just not enough of them as we used to see. And then, of course, as we look at some other key audience segments, you see that roving loyalists are sampling about 3.1 stations a week. So they're really going to see your competitors, even if you are their favorite station. The implication is that you may really want to be this commanding leadership position in your market, but it's just as much defined now as how effective you are at holding your viewers as it is in attracting viewers before the newscast starts. So, what good is it to get somebody and say that here's a reason why to watch tonight's newscast if they only watch for 2 or 3 minutes? You're not even going to get credit with Nielsen that they watched any news at all. So let's jump into some of the things that are going to drive people deeper into the show. Pacing is critical. All right, guys, these long voiceovers, sound bites, reporter intros, and packages that just seem to really need to be tightened down, those are really going to equal trouble. That's the first place that I would start asking my producers, my executive producers, my anchors who are doing the copy editing, is to really look to see how are we going to keep this pacing up if we're just quite frankly overriding the story. Long form reporting, like packages, they can work if a proper pace is kept throughout the package. Quite frankly, though, a 2 minute package has really got to have multiple characters, a lot of different emotional intrigue and twists and turns, not just more facts and information. If the story can be told at a minute and 15 or a minute and 20, but I'm going to add two or three more facts to it and make it longer, we're going to tell you that that just doesn't really work to hold viewers to get them down deeper into the show. Reading faster is not the goal, okay? Pacing and speed are two different things. You really want a proper pace with crisp copy points, short, choppy sentences, just like broadcast news has always been meant to be written as active storytelling, active voice, those types of things. It's not speed reading. This is a key point, guys. We want to remember that we're producing to an audience that's reading news and listening to videos and weather all day long at their pace on their apps, our apps, on their phones, on our websites, on other people's websites. So they're going to be impatient people. If we're expecting them to sit through our pace of a local TV newscast that's the same as it was 5 and 10 years ago, and they've been used to a different kind of pace, we're really putting ourselves at peril. So I'm going to show you several different examples throughout this entire presentation. This first one comes from the Fox affiliate in Cincinnati. And this is a setup for their late newscast. Now, on this night, they normally are on from 10 to 11 o'clock, and they don't have a competitor on in the space at the same time. And so they're able to do some real deep teasing with the open that they use.
The Bengals make their big pick. We are live with team reaction.
Video you have to see to believe. A local woman is dragged down several flights of stairs by her purse snatcher. Wait till you hear what happened to the thief.
Troopers say a toddler is found alone outside of a daycare, and mom is in disbelief.
Anybody could have walked up to that fence and taken my child.
What mom plans to do about it.
And what about your weekend? What the new models say.
A swastika tattooed on a lost dog's head. Now the owners are trying to remove the symbol of hate.
And big news for Amazon Prime members and their wallets.
This is Fox 19 Now.
The Cincinnati Bengals select Billy Price, center, Ohio State.
We are getting all the details you want to know about Billy Price. We're going to check in live with Jeremy Rao at Paul Brown Stadium in just a few minutes. But right now, video of a terrifying incident outside Jack Cincinnati Casino. Good evening to you. I'm Tricia Mackey.
And I'm Rob Williams. This is a story you saw first on Fox 19 Now back in November. And now Cincinnati police have released this video.
Ken Brown live along Reading Road where the man fled with a story you will only see right here on Fox 19 Now.
Yeah, that's right, guys. Tariq Smith would eventually plead guilty to a robbery charge. This all unfolded in the stairwell you see across the street behind me here. He'd get 3 years' time for what happened there. Now, the video, the newly released video that it is very difficult to refute and can be just as hard to watch.
So you notice a lot of things there, as we said going into the clip. It's a little bit longer probably than what your late newscast is doing when you're up against a competitor or two or three in the market that are on at the same time. But the pacing of it was just really, really well done. They only used the amount of words that they needed to use to get you interested into the story, and then they're on to the next one and the next one and the next one. And even the pace off the start of the top of the newscast was very good until, quite frankly, we got to the reporter live shot where things tended to slow down just a little bit. So that may be a little bit of an extreme in terms of understanding how to drive people deeper into a newscast, but a lot of stations have started to do a better job of trying to get some emotional sound and keep their pacing high in these, especially late news intros. Here's an example from your station in Omaha.
Breaking news, a shooting outside of Walmart has turned deadly. What Omaha police are telling us about the investigation.
We'll find her. Yeah, I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up on my baby. She will be fine.
A mother determined to find her missing daughter when the family of Kamisha Hollis is focusing their search in Iowa this weekend.
So long, winter weather. I have a 10-day forecast that will put a smile on your face.
Live at 10 starts now with breaking news.
Local breaking news, a woman has died after a shooting at the Irvington Walmart.
Right now, detectives are searching through surveillance video, trying to find out what led up to the shooting. Josh Bryder is live and has just learned the identity of the victim. Josh?
Omaha police identify her as 21-year-old Kavion Nelson. She was rushed to the hospital in extremely critical condition tonight. Now, people we spoke to around here say it was a terrifying evening they never thought would be so close to them.
So a couple of different things there. You notice they had breaking news. A lot of times when you're going to have breaking news, you will not want to have a long open at all. You'll want to get straight to it, especially if that breaking news has some really compelling pictures that goes along with it. In this case, this story didn't. But you notice that the anchor was able to sell past the breaking news with some of the other emotional stories that they had also. And then the reporter in this one got to his video much quicker because, quite frankly, there just wasn't a lot to be able to see at the scene there. So the cell for breaking news was there with their big voice open. They have a special open. The newscast starts with breaking news, but they didn't miss that emotional cell with the soundbite of the mother, and they also had a really pretty compelling weather tease there also. For those of you that aren't including weather in your teases for late news, you're really missing an opportunity because that weather, especially for 10 or 11 o'clock at night, should really be pointing people toward the next day, tomorrow, not what is happening now or tonight or the weekend, because that's why people are watching 11 o'clock at night. Here's a good example of visual pacing from your station, the Gray Station in Wichita.
Thank you, Ross. Exclusive Skyhawk 12 video captures a wind-driven fire burning through a salvage yard in Sedgwick. And take a look at this video. You can see dozens of cars destroyed by the fires. Crews spent hours fighting the flames. Trevor Macy spent the evening there and brings us an update from the scene.
This is what remains of a...
So the story's about the pictures, and they give the anchor good pictures to talk over, and then they turn in the big monitor wall as well and quickly get to the reporter. Now, this was a nighttime, a late newscast, and so we want to get to some darker pictures a little bit quicker also, but they actually, I think, achieved that with the reporter on the scene quickly. So this is an example in Kansas City of breaking news in the morning, and obviously really good pictures. We're going to play this video in the upper right first, and you'll be able to see how they had two cameras at the scene. We're able to do some different boxes so they could include the reporters up there, and then I'll come down and explain what's happening down here in this other one.
This apartment building, so firefighters are extensively, they've got their ladders raised, their hoses out, all crews here on scene really trying to get this fire out. So we will continue to have more updates for you as this fire progresses. Hopefully they can get it out soon, but stick with 41 Action News for all these updates this morning. Very traumatic morning for all those involved.
Absolutely, Sarah, and having to hear the momentary decisions they had to make, jumping from window.
So they're able to bring their anchor back up into that box while they're giving some perspective and then still looking at the live pictures. So that's when the big breaking news really is going to be something that people just can't take their eyes off of from an audience retention standpoint. So at that same morning when this was all going on, then we still have to do the things that people are tuning into morning news for, like traffic and weather and all the other news that's involved. So they put the breaking news down in this lower left-hand corner of the screen.
In Lawrence, where it's now west of the storm, it's picked up quite a bit. So you can see 14-mile-per-hour winds. That's sustained, gusting up to 20. We're going to see that here in Lawrence, where it's now west of.
So quite frankly, I would have liked to seen this box even a little bit bigger and maybe had a graphic on it, but they pretty much did this on the fly. a good example of how breaking news and urgent weather are still going to be your best retention tools. And you can take this same concept with weather, quite frankly, very much. If you've got pictures or things that just need to stay on the screen, but you can't obviously just do nothing but that the entire time. It's very important that if you have breaking news or weather, that you're in any newscast, morning or evening, that you're going into a commercial break and you're coming out of a commercial break, reminding them that we continue to cover this big breaking news story. We're going to have any developments because, again, a lot of these folks are tuning over to you because their favorite station may or may not have satisfied their need for that one story, and they're going to be clicking around to see who might be doing that. Imagine if you're providing this type of an approach and they are just not keeping a constant picture on the screen of that kind. So Nielsen, as we talked about, requiring that 6 minutes or requiring 5 minutes for 15-minute viewing block. Most stations try to create a longer A block, right? So they're going to want to have a 7 to 9 minute block followed by a much shorter block. That pacing in the shorter block is really critical. Short voiceovers, VOSOTs in that B block make it feel a little bit longer. Don't let first weather give all the viewer everything that they needed and no reason to watch later for full weather, because quite frankly, that's what's going to get that second quarter hour credit that you really need. We want weather to be crossing or ending shortly after 21 in an early and a late newscast, and it really means that your weather's going to start around 6:17:30 or 10:17:30, depending upon what time of day you're talking about. Here's a different way to look at it with that 8-minute A block, a 2-minute commercial break, a 2-minute B block. The little light blue indicates teases that you would want to get through here. Teases become really, really important. We'll talk about that in a couple of seconds. Here's another way to produce a newscast that will get good results by driving people deeper into a show and allowing for both Nielsen and ComScore, really more of a Nielsen late news strategy. This is backloading all of your commercial breaks. That's the gray section here in the second quarter hour. It's better for a 10 o'clock or an 11 o'clock newscast, and quite frankly, not very good to do this for 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock because it doesn't allow, you're really going to get all of your viewing here and here, and they may use the remote control and not see a lot of this. So whatever is going to follow this program, it's going to really kind of ruin your flow. But here's a couple of different ways to produce your newscast timing, blocking wise, as you try to reinvent yourself a little bit, driving people deeper into the shows. Also important for all newscasts in anchor is anchor delivery. Quite frankly, for audience retention. All stories don't have to be delivered breathlessly, but the copy needs to be updated. The anchor should kind of have this just-in tone of voice on as many stories as possible, and if they don't, it may be because the copy's not written that way, right? And we need to go back and encourage those anchors to talk about if they couldn't deliver the story with any kind of urgency, potentially we didn't write it that way, and that will help. Viewers are disconnecting and turning away when the copy points in the anchor delivery seem mundane. If viewers think they're hearing old news or stories they've already read online, that they quite frankly turn the station. Here's an example of a focus group where we ask people, what keeps you watching?
It's also something, if you're listening, it's a key word or something that you got to look. Like, what do they say? People can't resist looking at a train wreck, right? Or is that, what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, if I'm doing something and I hear the newscaster say, "Oh my God, look at this car," I'm gonna move to it, or yeah.
But I think Jennifer's actually getting to really what I think I'm asking. So if a lot of you indicating you don't. More often than not, you're not sitting in front of the TV, or at least there's some. So what are the things that keep you from, when you're getting ready, that get you turning?
The words, what they say, how they say it, the empathy in their voice.
Yeah. That's just anchors, guys. If a good anchor can make these guys look up from their phone, make them re-engage with the television screen, then we know they're probably not going to be turning away from us with the remote control, and they'll keep watching. If the words aren't there, the anchors can't do their thing. If the words are there and the anchors aren't doing their thing, well, then we have another problem as well. Pacing, content choices, and energy critical in all newscasts, but there are some differences in early and late newscasts as well. So we would tell you anything from like 4 o'clock in the afternoon to 7:30 shows can allow for some more in-depth. Quite frankly, 4 and 5 are not really good in-depth stories, but 6 o'clock through 7:30, a little bit better to be able to have some stories that may have more impact-driven details for our viewers, driving them deeper into the second and third blocks with some of those stories. But that 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock time frame, it's really less forgiving on that longer form news. Live shots in all these shows should be tight, but especially in that late newscast, because quite frankly, that's a time period we're seeing just more and more use by news viewers who say, I have just a couple more minutes before I go to bed. I'm going to go back and stream something, or I'm going to get caught up in a different way. As soon as they think you're going to take too much of their time telling you one story that they may or may already know something about, they're out of there. So that late newscast should have the highest story count of any news that you produce all day long. Limit repetition of stories posted online in another newscast unless you can update it, right? We don't want to run away from the big stories, but find that next day hook for sure. Mornings are different as well because producing long blocks followed by short blocks can kind of still work, but you've got to avoid really backloading or front loading any half hour. The show builds an audience, so we'd rather backload it than front load it. But then again, you can't come in at 6 o'clock or 6:30 with not a lot to say. So we encourage people to build as many 6 to 7 minute news and weather blocks as possible. And we think every morning block of news should have some weather in it in some way, shape, or form as well. And plan for as few commercial breaks as possible. That means they may have to be a little bit longer, but the fewer times you tell people we're going to a commercial break, the better it's going to be for retention. Aim for about 45 to 60 minutes without repeating stories, because we know that the viewer will give us more of their time. But as soon as we start to repeat stories, updating them is great, but pure repeats are really deadly. Content contributes greatly to retention loss in the mornings. Viewers want utility content on their timetable. A no-wait weather strategy with lower third graphics or an L bar really works well. Sell to weather and traffic every however many minutes you're going to do it, and just remind them that if it's not right in front of them when they want it, that you're going to get there pretty quickly. The implication is if viewers don't know when this pertinent information is coming, they'll use that remote control and they'll go somewhere else and find it. And all demos are really equal in that demand. We asked people in that Gray study, what are some of the reasons why you are turning to a local news program other than your favorite in the morning? And we've broken it out by some key audience segments here, but you can notice some similarities, right? And number one is to get weather right at that moment. So their forgivingness of you guys when they turn you on that, they'll have weather in a couple of minutes or 10 minutes or 12 minutes. Not very much. A lot of these guys expect to get it as soon as they turn it on. To compare news coverage on different stations, well, the only reason people ever want to compare anything is when there's some level of dissatisfaction with what they're watching. So this turning to somebody other than my favorite can be really, really tricky. Pacing is a big thing as well. Let's watch an example from a station in Fort Myers. This is in the morning with Wink Television.
Number 9, take a look at this exclusive video of crime scene detectives searching in Naples Bank for clues. They're taking out bags of evidence here. All of this after a dramatic high-speed chase ends in a serial bank robber's arrest.
And I want you to take a look at this brand new video as well. And this just shows a level of care investigators are taking to build a case against the crook. Do you see all of this black dust on these doors here? That's actually fingerprinting dust. And let me show you exactly where this 3-week crime spree came to an end. This red dot on US 41 right here, this is the Wells Fargo that was robbed. If you go all the way over to Alligator Alley, this is where they finally caught up with the crook after a crash there. Wake News reporter Jessica Alpern's live at that bank with the latest details on this investigation.
And Lindsay, just before he tried to get away, he robs yet another bank. This Wells Fargo just...
So another great example of how energy and pacing will really keep things going along in the morning. And just there's something about not putting the video full screen or the map full screen and allowing that talent to really drive it along that really did what this graphic says right here, keeping things moving along. Teases fall into that as well. You definitely want to tease both in headlines and going out of blocks, but you got to keep it quick. We're not looking to deliver a table of contents still to come, and then you just throw out a whole laundry list of stories that you've got coming their way. You really want to look for those stories that promise something to the viewer that will have a benefit for them. So sometimes that is the utility content. Most of the time it is the utility content. And then it's timeliness, like what's happening today. We talk about news in all day parts, but especially in the morning falling into the buckets of new, now, or next. If a story falls into a new, now, or next bucket, then a viewer will probably have more attention for it than a story that happened the day before. But, oh, yeah, we're going to tell you about it in the morning news in case you didn't watch last night. it's super important to be able to tease the right kinds of stories. Avoid teasing feature stories or video that you say they haven't seen, when in many cases they watch more video than you do because they're on Facebook all day long or YouTube or different places. It really needs to be good content that they have a viewer benefit with, or it's going to have some timeliness factor to it later in their day. Avoid deep teasing more than about 20 minutes away because, quite frankly, if you deep tease, it better be worth it. Here's another focus group, and we asked them what causes you to turn the channel.
What turns you off in the morning? What, if it comes on, you just go out of the room or turn the station?
Partial stories.
Oh, no. Partial stories. What do you mean, Rodney?
When they come on and they start talking about, start into a story, say at like 4:30. Well, tune in at 6 for the rest of the story.
Yeah.
That's just annoying.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, what really...
What turns you off in the morning, Tyrone?
What really pisses me off is that when they a story will that when they'll say something like, "Oh, they rescued this cat from this tree," or something. I mean, something that is like so non-important. I don't even want to. I know something else happened. Yeah,
like when the pilot covered the seagull that was rescued.
Yeah. So two big takeaways there. One, the one gentleman said, they tell me something's going to be happening an hour from now. Why would they do that? I'm not going to be available. I'm already off to work. That's just a waste of my time. Not a station he's going to want to come back and watch. And the other gentleman talking about when they tease or even show a video content of just really fluffy stories that he's not interested about first thing in the morning. Really goes back to the point, guys, of how the content that you choose is super important in terms of retaining these viewers in the morning, and then what you choose to tease them from segment to segment is really going to be important also. So in the mornings, the headline should hook the viewer to watch deeper into the show, not serve as a roadblock. You're not going to get away with as long of a headline as what we saw earlier examples in those late news. The top and bottom hour headlines, 20 to 40 seconds max. You want to be friendly off the top with your anchors because we want to wake up to friendly people, a good professional group of people working together. But long hellos and anchor chat, that's not the place for that anymore. It's really going to hurt your retention. Give those anchors some time maybe later to react to some talker stories, but off the top, it should be avoided. And then use different visual techniques to keep the teases interesting. Here's an example.
Good morning to you. I'm Christelle Bell.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Michael Maley.
Well, in today's headlines, a new South Beach, Florida-inspired condo is coming to North Myrtle Beach. What makes these condos stand out from the others?
One local sheriff's office working to get firearms off the streets, how they're doing it, and the incentive.
So the film strip's not something that you would want to use on a daily basis, but it's encouraging our producers, our executive producers, our production staff to just keep reinventing us visually a little bit as well. That keeps things fresh in the morning. Liberally use the showcasing graphics of New, Now, and Next, but make sure that they don't slow down the pace. Here's your station, the Gray Station in Lansing.
The next court date for the teen accused of killing his parents on the campus of Central Michigan University last week has still not been set. 19-year-old James Eric Davis Jr. was arraigned on 2 counts of murder and weapons charges from a hospital bed yesterday. Police say he shot and killed James and Diva Davis in Campbell Hall last Friday when they were picking the teen up for the start of spring break. Davis Jr. was arrested after a 15-hour manhunt. His bond is set at $1.25 million. Several people arrested during white nationalist Richard Spencer's visit to MSU Monday are expected to be formally charged today. 3 protesters from the event were arraigned yesterday. A total of 25 people were arrested during the event on Monday. The charges range from carrying a concealed weapon to resisting and obstructing officers.
New this morning, President Donald Trump says he'll be making a decision soon on who will become his new chief economic advisor. This as his current White House National Economic Council Director, Gary Cohn.
So they're using full-page animated graphics. They're using their tab a lot. One of the things that didn't exactly happen for them in this example, but they actually do a good job with it on a day-in, day-out basis, is the see it, say it rule. If we're going to put new information here, the words out of Laura's mouth, the anchor should be new information. If we're going to say happening right now, happening this morning, the animated graphic should say happening this morning. But notice how the anchors just keep going. They're not waiting for these things to finish. We're not letting these full-page animated graphics get in our way. They're actually just adding to the pacing of what we're doing. Morning weather is super important. Short hits with limited repetition. If the viewer knows they're going to get a lot of weather, but it's going to be shorter hits, and we're going to keep telling different stories as we go throughout the morning, they will like that. That'll be something that will retain them better than anything else. If it's going to be one big old long weather hit, followed by one that comes later that's longer, that repeats some of the information, you might get 15 minutes of credit out of that one viewer, maybe, and then you're probably not going to get anything more. So every one of these hits that they do needs to have some kind of out the door weather. It needs to have an 8 to 12 hour forecast, and we need to be selling ahead to the idea that we're going to have some differences in our forecast from hit to hit as well. Static live shots, or excuse me, static shots, I should just say, live shots of outdoors, like take a look at our tower camera, those types of things. They get boring, right? They're good for 3 or 4 seconds, but don't linger on them unless you can move the camera and show the viewer something that's going on. If you have active weather like rain and you can take a look at those things, that's great. But big old long shots of let's take a look at all these different cameras out the window, brief analysis going to be a lot better than staying on those for a long period of time. Here's an example of morning weather in Savannah, Georgia.
Forecast this morning, we begin on a dry note. Safe Touch Security First Alert Live Radar finally getting a break. And take you outside now. Savannah Hilton Head International Airport Skycam. It's dry, it's clear, it's cold though. Temperatures in the lower 40s. Up in Bluffton, 278 near Buckwalter. Temperature right at 40 with calm winds both locations. So not much of a wind chill today. Your wearcast through the day. Temperatures in the 40s this morning. So I'm going to say jackets for sure. Maybe even a coat out there by this afternoon. Upper 60s at the beaches.
So notice on the first graphic, he put two cameras together, so at least it's a little more visually stimulating than just having one camera. And then he had the temperatures with them. He gave brief analysis of what it's like out at the airport and the other camera, and then he just, quite frankly, moved on. Now he's giving me a forecast of what I should wear today, and this is not something he's going to be doing more than about once an hour, right? But these are the kinds of differences in weather hits in the morning that you have to do from time to time. Now, this is something that's not in the mornings, but an example of a weathercast where they're doing some deep teasing weather as the lead story, starting with the chief meteorologist, because obviously in Bristol at WCYB, Dave Dirks is the man that everybody wants to come watch versus the competition.
Accurate, reliable, getting the facts right. News 5 in high definition starts right now.
We're tracking winter weather across our region. Right now, you're looking live at our cameras in Johnson City, Kingsport, Bristol, and Elizabethton as we continue to bring you the very latest on the conditions. Thanks for joining us for News 5. I'm Julie Newman.
I'm PJ Johnson. We're going to bring you team coverage on this winter weather event. News 5's Jessica Griffith is in Kingsport. She's going to bring us the latest weather conditions from there. Also, News 5's John Engel is live in Johnson City overlooking the interstate. He'll tell us what he's seen. And Storm Track 5 meteorologist Ricky Matthews is driving through Duffield, Virginia on Highway 23 to give us the latest details from Southwest Virginia.
But first, we begin with Chief Meteorologist Dave Dirks, who is tracking it all from the Storm Track 5 Weather Center. This snow took its time getting here today, Dave, but you have the latest on how long this is going to stick around.
Absolutely. It looks like it'll stick around through the evening, taper off as we go through the overnight. Temperatures really fall off quickly once the snow begins. Topped out in the low 40s now across the Tri-Cities area.
So deep teasing weather with the team approach and showing all the different cameras worked on this day for these guys quite nicely. It's going to be different if you're obviously in a severe weather situation with tornadoes or lightning where you really need to get to the meteorologist much quicker because it's more of a life-threatening situation at that very moment in time. But guys, build it out. Definitely figure out how can we make sure to maximize and drive people deeper into our show with the very reason why they've tuned in to watch it, which is weather. So if you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out and contact me. You can check out the Smith Geiger website. We've got a lot of these examples on there and other ones. The easy way to get there, just smithgeiger.com and look for the blog section. You can follow me, Bill Seitzler, I have my own Facebook page. You can look there, Twitter, LinkedIn. Happy to keep the conversation going with you guys. I hope this proved valuable for you today as we get through producing for retention. And we look forward to another Gray webinar group training coming up next month.